Good morning or afternoon, everybody, on this Tuesday today. Today, what we are going to be doing in social studies class is returning to the history of the Reconstruction era. I know that some of you, like me, might be kind of sad or upset that we're not going to be doing a current events assignment today. And the reason for that is, as important as those are, looking at the schedule for a remainder of the time in the school year, we only have 5 more social studies lessons, including today. So after today, only 4 more social studies lessons. And as important as those are, you now have the skills to be able to do that on your own. So you should do this on your own to continue to look for current events and become informed and educated about the world. But today, we are going to be wrapping up our story of US history, which ends in Reconstruction for the year this year. Because again, you're going to take US history in high school, but it's going to be more like the second half of US history. And they're going to assume that you in 8th grade ended US history by wrapping up Reconstruction. They're going to already assume that you know what's up with Reconstruction, and then right after Reconstruction is when your high school US history class will start. So this builds on each other. You have to know what's going on now to be able to kind of move forward in high school. So what we're going to talk about today is, again, Reconstruction. The Civil War is over. Slavery with the 13th Amendment, what we're going to look at today in your Do Now, officially makes slavery across the United States after the Civil War illegal. But what we're looking at kind of extends out to bigger questions in the world, where it's like, okay, cool, just because slavery is not illegal, it should mean, oh, cool, everybody's equal now, right? Everything's great, America, freedom, equality, right? That's like the mainstream kind of story. But as we're going to see, unfortunately, and as many of you probably know, this is not the truth and the story that actually happens because of major things in society that we've seen, like racism and white supremacy. And unfortunately, this is kind of like the haunting curse of the United States, is this legacy of racial injustice. Today, we're going to focus on African Americans in the South, but a lot of these issues, that the kind of obstacles to equality and barriers to justice that were faced by African Americans after the Civil War could apply to other racial groups as well across the country. A lot of these factors that were happening to African Americans were very similar to exactly what were happening to Mexican Americans and like Black and brown people in the Southwest, places like Southern Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. So just because we're looking at African Americans today doesn't mean that these conditions weren't faced by other racial groups in the United States as well. So specifically, what our aim is today is historians will be able to, in writing, explain some of the major obstacles to equality faced by freed peoples and former slaves after the Civil War. Because again, kind of in like the really oversimplified version of US history, you kind of get this whole like, all right, so 1619, first slave shows up. That's when slavery starts in the United States. And then for about 200 years, there's slavery. And then 1865, Civil War is over and slavery is over. Woo, okay, no more slavery. And then the story's like, okay, cool, so everything's good, right? Slavery's over, yay, everything's taken care of and solved. But then for some mysterious reason in the 1950s, there's this thing called the Civil Rights Movement with like Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and then also the Chicano rights movement and other kind of like racial minorities rising up and demanding freedom and equality. And it's like, well, if all the problems were taken care of in 1865, then why later is there this major right or movement for equality and justice in society? It's because what we're going to see is that, unfortunately, problems weren't solved, and there was still a lot of injustice and inequality after the Civil War. And we're going to specifically look at what types of issues these people faced and build connections to these other groups. Because again, these barriers to equality and justice faced by former slaves after the Civil War are very similar, if not almost identical, to the barriers to justice and equality faced by Mexican Americans and other Black and brown folks all across the country, not just in the South. So again, we're going to watch a good amount of videos today. Make sure you watch these for overview. And also, we're going to be reading a few texts, but we're going to cover some big pictures ideas. So make sure that you are reading all of the texts and watching the videos so that you kind of know what's going on. And again, if you're sad about not being able to do a video or an article, then just read one on your own, and you can give some extra credit if you tell me about it, and I'll give you some extra credit. So make sure you watch the videos below. Do you do now? And I'll see you in the next video.